It's all fun and games until the tabloids throw you to the wolves. I'm really, really proud of being Richard and Judy's daughter. I'm not in the public eye anymore, really. Like, I'm a health and fitness author, broadcaster, coach. I digress. I'm still tabloid fodder, and I venture to guess half the people reading the Sidebar of Shame now have no idea who my parents even are, let alone me. Those comment sections should be shut the fuck down. They are online forums for mass bullying. When I was doing Dancing on Ice, I had my first ever panic attack. Ooh. In the middle of a routine. It was awful. And it just all came tumbling down. Before I knew it, I was a fucking mess.
Lifting weights feels freaking excellent.
It sounds so ridiculous, but it was like a calling. It was like, here I am, this is it. My strength, my mental ability, my physical ability, it just went like Tetris, chick, 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 chick. And I was like, oh, I'm never gonna stop doing this.
My guest today is Chloe Madeley, a personal trainer, coach, author and mentor whose experience in health and fitness has earned her the position of one of the most trusted names in the industry. I should probably tell you at this point that she has coached me, so I can tell you firsthand that her ability to steer somebody towards their goals by shifting mindset and self-belief and arming them with accessible and accurate information is astonishingly effective. Chloe was born in Manchester and raised in London, and after a brief stint at Leeds Trinity and All Saints College, focused on a career in media. She has presented Big Brother's Big Mouth, appeared as a contestant on Dancing on Ice and The Jump, and was a columnist for Now magazine before launching her own website, Fitness Fondue. She is married to former England rugby player James Haskell, and they have a daughter, Bodhi, together. Chloe has no problems admitting she's a work in progress. She admits when she's wrong, is extremely self-aware, and knows her own mind, which is why I'm extremely excited to go on this journey of her life lessons in this episode of the podcast. Chloe!
What an intro.
Welcome to the show.
Stop with that intro. I mean, you didn't mention my parents. I'm like in shock. You didn't call me a TV presenter. I'm just like, I definitely had my stint, but it came and went pretty quickly. I'm so impressed. Thank you very much.
Is that stuff that you would prefer didn't preface everything that you did?
Oh my God, it's so, you know what? I'm really, really proud of being my parents' daughter. So I'm really prideful when people introduce me as being Richard and Judy's daughter. It's this weird aftermath of who's the TV presenter, because they've got the main thing in there, I guess. Mm-hmm. Then they just don't bother to learn anything else about me, but they've just got me onto a podcast or, a newspaper, a magazine to interview me. And I'm like, well, first of all, it's kind of rude. Second of all, do your job. What's happened to journalism? Or even if you have the audacity to have your own podcast where you have guests on, do your research. I find it bizarre. But yeah, the amount of times I've gone on podcasts or done interviews and people just don't know what I do for a living. And then I just immediately think why am I here? Why did it's just very, very frustrating. Now I sound like I'm already moaning right off the bat. There's going to be a lot of this today.
I'm so excited. Well, because that leads into, so that's like the Nepo baby thing. And you have worked so hard at what you do. Mm. And actually being as impactful and as influential as you are in the fitness space hasn't had anything to do with any leg up from any connection that your parents might have had. No,
it's really interesting. That word nepotism, it defined, I suppose, my later teenage years and early 20s. That word nepotism was thrown at me from every tabloid and troll, because this is when Twitter also started to come about, that you can imagine. And we were just talking before we started recording on the podcast, just listening to your brilliant episode with Dean Piper, who, of course, I've known since I was a teenager. And he mentioned that nepotism thing again in quite a derogatory way. And I suppose a lot of people feel negatively about that term. And I said, well, first of all, it's prevalent in every industry you can think of, especially things like medicine and, law, but also the media, but every industry. It's a prevalent thing that happens. And I think from an outsider or objective point of view, and this is what happened to me when I went into television, which I should never have done because I hated it. I think people look at it and they're like, oh, she just wants an easy ride. Oh, she just wants a leg up. And that's how you kind of define this action of following in your parents' footsteps. For me, it was very much a very natural, organic case of monkey see, monkey do. I would go to school and so when I was really little, my parents were doing this morning was my nursery, it was my daycare. I would just run around the prop room, I'd run around the floor. Floor managers hated me. I was a nightmare. And then, you know, when they did the Channel 4 show and they were on in the evenings after school, I'd go to the studio. Like, that's just what I did. So once schooling was done for me and I was still embroiled in this world, of course I went into it. And as, by the way, did my brother. And it's, although much more behind the scenes than I did. And then I realized very quickly that I didn't want to be there. And I know we're going to come on to this. I took a big risk and I walked away from it to a much less glamorous, much less financially rewarding job. And yeah, I look back now and I remember how much I struggled with it. And I think, you know, that was kind of the beginning of my struggles with generalized anxiety disorder. And yeah, it was tough. And I don't really think, I look back on myself now and I'm like, I didn't go into it to gain anything other than just ease of like kind of transition, I suppose.
Well, because the assumption is that you would just be in the proximity of your parents and someone would say, hey, do you want to host a television show? Or, hey, do you want to do this? And an opportunity that someone else would have to fight really, really hard for.
Yeah, 100%. And so what's really interesting, though, is that, as you mentioned there, like the dancing on ices and the, I don't know, random red carpet event or press junket for Legally Blonde or whatever. And I would get offered the thing and that was great. But what nobody ever realized or knew at that point, or no, you know what, they did know, what no one ever said out loud, especially in the industry, was that I was also a junior, I was a runner, and then I was a junior researcher, and I worked my way up to senior researcher every day of every week of every month behind the scenes while I was doing everything else. Before I realized I don't want to be a TV producer. What the hell am I doing here? I also don't want to be a TV presenter. And I bailed. I was like, hard pass, thanks, bye. But I was very much working and I was doing those kind of like horrible, you know, graveyard hours and coffee runs on the really, really early morning TV shows.
But no one wanted to shine a light on that.
No one wants to say that because it's much easier to be like, oh, look at this, you know. And this was during a time when, you know, the Paris Hiltons of this world were really blowing up. Everybody just loved being like, what have you done? And you know what? Right. Fair enough. Totally fair enough. But I was actually working. And it wasn't a case of me being like, this is going to be an easy ride. I think easy transition in terms of life moving, but not like, oh, I'm never going to have to do it. Like, it just wasn't like that. If that makes sense.
It does. So because we've already mentioned it and it falls into, as you say, risk, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to sort of lead into this now. How would you describe your relationship with risk?
I used to be, when I was younger, a lot more, I think, ballsy and risky in every context you can think of. And actually, I would say that trying to follow in my parents' footsteps in TV really quashed that and made me quite a scared, anxious, nervous person, which I wasn't growing up. And actually, I said when you asked me about risk that the riskiest thing that I've ever done was coming away from TV and pursuing a career in personal training, which any personal trainer will tell you there's no money in personal training. But actually, do you know what's so funny? Just talking to you about it now, I don't think that's the riskiest thing that I did. I think that is the antithesis of risk. I think it was the safest thing I ever did. I think it was, I want to come away from this and I want to come away from it now. And I was so very lucky that I fell in love with weightlifting specifically. Mm-hmm. That's what happened. That's what broke the mold for me. And it was my ex-boyfriend who was a bodybuilder who taught me how to weightlift, and I fell in love with it session one. That was it. And I'm so lucky that I found something that I loved, and there was someone to teach me how to do it who was a personal trainer, that showed me that there was a life and a life outside of media that I could safely pursue. And so actually, ironically, I don't think it was the riskiest thing I ever did. It was the opposite.
It's the best thing you ever did.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
So if you had thought at the time, this is a big risk, me leaving media, what was at stake?
I knew it's hard when it's really contradictory, which is, my favorite road to walk down. I know. People like, this makes no sense. It was equal parts of I am my father's daughter and, my husband's wife. There was a part of me, especially as a teenage girl, that did really like attention and did really like kind of performing. And that's why I did Dancing on Ice and the jump and things like that, because it's a real, it's a challenge, it's a performance. And it was equal parts, again, contradictory, I know, equal parts of being like, I am probably never going to be like the center of attention ever again. I'm never going to be like relevant again. And I need to kind of accept that and walk away from it. And also running away from the word nepotism. Again, you talked with Dean Piper, the tabloid press kind of just really going for me constantly. And it was still very difficult to reconcile. And I think I heard Vicky Pattinson talking about this really recently. This idea that, she did Geordie Shore, she blew up, and then she did The Jungle and she blew up and she won. And then she had this massive influx of work. And we all know that fades. Mm-hmm. And feeling like, if I'm not relevant, if people don't care about me, if I come away from the spotlight, where do I get my self-worth from? But still, I'm really happy that I did it. It saved me 100%.
I think what's really interesting is because of the connection, people would assume that you just said then tabloids would come for you. There would be this assumption that actually you'd get more of an easy ride.
No.
But no.
No, it was horrible. It was horrific. And that's why I ran. I realized quite quickly, like I say, I didn't really care about being on TV. I didn't really want to be a TV producer. And the trade-off that I was getting with the treat, like obviously the flogging from the press that I got all the time, it just wasn't worth it. My mental health just crashed and burned. And thank God that I found what I found, like weightlifting now, that led me into everything that's happened now. Because not only am I lucky enough that I found something I want to do, which in and of itself is really rare and a really miraculous thing, but also it just happened to be something that was going to mend my mental health and help me maintain my mental health. Training and when the word control falls on the wrong ears, especially in the context of what I do, people go, but for me, in the context of my mental health and what I was going through with GAD, I needed that. I badly needed that control.
You said that recently, and it really stuck with me because I sometimes don't say what I'm thinking about my issues with food and body image, because I know that to somebody who had a more restrictive issue, they would look at what I'm doing and be like, red flag.
Yeah.
But anything on the wrong ears can be dangerous.
100%. And I have to tread very, very carefully in my industry, which is obviously like a homing beacon for people who've had issues with food, exercise, body image. I've got this big flashing kind of lighthouse light to them, yet I have never, ever had an experience with an eating disorder. I've definitely over-restricted, when I had a photo shoot, whatever, and completely pendulum swung the other way as soon as the shoot was done. And I can kind of understand it from that angle, but I've never had an eating disorder. I definitely overtrained, but I never would have called myself an exercise addict. So I have to be very careful with my wording and an awareness of my audience and where a lot of them are coming from when it comes to things like that. So for me and anyone can relate, who's had, mental health issues outside of food, body image, exercise, will understand that control can be a wonderful thing. But to that bracket, that's, as she said, it's like a magnet, and you're like, you have to be very, very careful. You have to tread very carefully with your messaging, which I hope I do. I don't know. I don't know. I hope I do.
Well, I think you do, but obviously we all have our own very specific lens.
Yeah.
When did you know that you had generalized anxiety disorder?
When I was diagnosed with it, So when I was doing Dancing on Ice, I had my first ever panic attack.
Ooh.
Yeah. In the middle of a routine. It was awful. And thank God for Denise Welsh, honestly, who's like my second mother. She's amazing. I came off stage and the producers, everyone was around me and everyone was talking, because I was meant to sit on the stage and watch the other routines. Anyone who watches the show will know. and I'm a good girl. I do as I'm told. I'm not difficult. I'm not, leading the charge of independence. I just walked straight off, and everyone came after me like, you're meant to be on stage. You're meant to be on stage. And I just had a meltdown. And thank God for Denise Welsh. She was like, everybody get that fuck out of the green room. And just kind of sat with me and sorted it out with me. And then I was like, everyone on ITV and my family were like, okay, well, you need to go to therapy because that's a big deal. Like a panic attack's a big deal.
It can feel like you're about to expire. Obviously, everyone's experience is different. I remember having one and just sort of slumping onto the floor, but while simultaneously sweating through everything that I was wearing and thinking that like something was about to attack me. It was terrifying.
It's a big deal, and it was awful. Yeah, and I sort of just going back in my head to another one I've had, which was even worse. But anyway, so I was so I was like, you know what? It's performance anxiety, and it's manifesting itself like this, because it's just the fight or flight, this adrenaline. You're on live television ice skating. Like, are you fucking kidding? So, like, of course, it was terrifying. Went to therapy and kind of thought, okay, well, this is performance anxiety. And I always had a bit of anxiety from, everything I've mentioned already. And I was like, okay, like, it's fine. And then I got into a relationship when I was on that show and completely broke me. And then, oh my gosh, it was just a wave that swallowed me up. And if it hadn't been, I remember my dad coming down to the kitchen for like the umpteenth morning in a row, and I was just slumped on the floor crying. And he was like, okay, no more. We're going to get you into therapy, and we're going to do it now. And if it hadn't been for that, I honestly do not know where I would be today.
Was it a quick decline into that sort of feeling? Or do you think, if you look back, do you think actually the signs have been...
Oh my God, yeah, for ages. Absolutely ages. I would say probably started maybe in my late teens. And then by the time, you know what, actually, I suppose it depends on your concept of time. It took a few years, and it did actually happen in quite quick succession in my head. But it did just get to a point where I basically stopped. I became an insomniac. I was vomiting. My anxiety was so bad. I would just vomit all the time, all day, every day. Panic attacks, less frequent, but frequent enough that they were plural. And I had to go to real therapy. And I'm so lucky that literally as all of this happened, I found what I'm doing now, and like I say, the beauty of finding something that I was meant to do instead of being so lost helped. B, the fact that it was something so physical that channels adrenaline and cortisol in such an effective way and forces you to be present. You have to be present when you've got 85 kg on your back. You have to be present. Something that forced me to take better care of myself. This was a time, like I was doing TV, you know what it's like. You go out Freedom every Thursday night, off your trolley, and rest on the weekend, and Monday through Thursday is party time, so it forced me to take care of myself and gave me purpose. I mean, I just remember the relief the day that I started getting my level 2 gym instruction qualification, which I've obviously added to, just in case anyone's like, that doesn't qualify you as a PT, babe. And it's never gone away. So
do you remember that first session, and like, could you hear angels? Was there a bright beam of light? Because sometimes we can get drawn to quick fixes, or we can sort of like, be like, oh, this is shiny new, I love it. But this seems like to your very core, it was like, I have found the thing.
Yeah. Do you know what? I used to, so cliche. People can be listening. I'm like, of course you did. I used to go to Pineapple like 2 nights a week, and I used to dance.
With an off-the-shoulder sweatshirt.
Yeah, I've got Pineapple off the shoulder. Yeah. The big baggy pants. What were the pants called?
The harem, are they harem pants?
Yeah. Oh, God.
I really couldn't pull those off with my lower body.
Mean, honestly, who could? Nobody can.
In faurness, no one can.
Not even Russell Brand can pull them off, and he is like, far from pear-shaped. So I used to go, and it's the same feeling when I got that I hadn't had since I was a teen. I stopped when I had my GCSEs because I'm somebody who gets very overwhelmed very quickly, and I have to drop all the balls just to keep one in the air when that happens. And so I stopped going when I was 15-ish. But I was good. I was a good dancer, right? And I And it reminded me of that when you pick up a dance routine and you and the whole class are doing it together in tandem and you finally got it. And I was always the one at the back. It took me the longest, but I got there in the end, right? So I'm proud of that. It was like that again. It was like everything synced up. My mental space, my surroundings, my presence in my surroundings, my strength, my mental ability, my physical ability. It just went like Tetris, chick, 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 chick. And I was like, oh, I'm never going to stop doing this. And then I started to get really into it. And I kept watching my boyfriend at the time, who was PTing people in the gym. And I was just like seething with jealousy, not of the, I always say that, people are like, oh, of the other girls. I'm like, no, of him.
But he was teaching.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. And I was like, that's it. I've got to do it. I've got to. It was like, it sounds so ridiculous. People are like, oh, you're a PT, relax. But it was like, it was like a calling. It was like, here I am. This is it. And I just loved it. And I love writing. So the fact that this was at a time when everyone had a blog, now everyone has a TikTok, but this time everyone had a blog. I was like, well, I'm going to have a blog because I love writing. And I remember day one of my PT course, I wrote they said, write on a piece of paper what you want to get out of this. And I said, I want to build a career lifting, teaching other women how to lift, and writing about it. And I literally did it. And I truly, truly feel like it was the stars aligned and it was meant to happen.
What you're describing as well as getting into a flow state.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I love that. And I love how you said it.
Well, I just sort of like, let's bring the woo-woo to it.
Yeah.
Because it is really, sometimes you just know and you don't need to be able to explain it to somebody. Sometimes everything just fits together.
Yeah.
And
it's meant to happen.
You just got to go with it.
100%. It's happened again to me recently, and I can't talk about it yet because it's a project that is definitely in the very early stages. I got to a point recently, like coaching, where I've just, not the EC method because I have Emma, and obviously it's group coaching, so it's a bit different.
Just for context for listeners, so Chloe has something called the EC method with another trainer who's been on this podcast, Emma Story-Gordon. Mm-hmm. That's where I did my coaching with you guys.
And you smashed it.
I smashed it. Well, also I'm just like,
Exactly.
I won't ever go anywhere. Whenever I find out they're having a meetup, I'm just like, I'm coming. But that's just one thing that you do with the group. So that's group online coaching.
That's group online coaching. So we have like a few hundred women in there, and we're
Ollie.
And Ollie. Let's never forget Ollie. We actually had Ollie and 2 other men on the last round. I actually don't think Ollie came back for this one. Anyway, I digress. So we do it very responsibly. I mean, I say it almost like, we don't really coach everyone, but we do. We do the workouts, and obviously we do the nutrition coaching and the live Q&As and the podcast. We do it all. But then I have my one-to-one, which is much more bespoke. It's a much smaller group of clients, but it requires my full compassion, attention, focus. And I've realized that recently that I can't do Bodhi, the EC method, the one-to-one coaching, write my 5th book, and 2 podcasts. It's too much. And I'm like, okay, something's got to give. And again, it's just mad how the stars kind of aligned and a flow state has ensued. That's given me the opportunity to come away from one-to-one, to spend more time with Bodhi, to do something new, to match pretty much financially what I'd be losing by doing that in a time where I'm still furnishing a house, which is so expensive. It's happening again. And I just feel so, I feel so lucky because for so long I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? I can't come away from this thing because then I'll lose this. And it's very interesting. I do think to be really woo-woo about it, putting it out there and kind of, I don't know, people seeing things in your life shift can have a knock-on effect, and then your life will shift with it, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I do think sometimes you have to make room for things. And you think there isn't any room, but it's weird how little things can
shift.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago being in this really financially lucrative consulting job. Yeah. But it was killing my spirit. Yeah. I hated going into it. But I had wanted for such a long time to have a job that would give me some financial security and just like keep the wolf from the door.
Of course.
That I was like, well, I have to overlook all of the things about it that are just horrible. And I was on the train into work one day and I dozed off on the train. And when I woke up, the clearest thought was, you're going to miss something major if you go in one more day. Yeah. So I went and resigned.
I love this. This is amazing.
It's really stupid though, because financially it was a really stupid thing to do. But something from within just said, even though you're trying not to see the bad in this, it's taking up all of your attention and you're going to miss a golden opportunity.
Yeah, you'll fall down.
And so sure enough, within the next 6 weeks, something else much better turned up.
I love that. And that's the thing. I suppose that was a big risk coming away from TV and making, I mean, again, got to keep referencing your podcast with Dean. He talked about how much money there was in TV then. There isn't now.
Oh my gosh.
It's nuts. And knowing that PTs, you know, I would make at best in London £50 for an hour's work. And then I would have to drive around London because I wasn't working in a gym. I was self-employed. Go to another client, which would take an hour. I mean, it was like, and I had to move in with my parents as well. It was definitely like a wake-up call, but I loved every second of it. And I also think when you really step back like that, and you'll know this, it does kind of incentivize you to go, how can I build this? How can I make this bigger? How can I monetize this? You know, we talk a lot about this on the EC methods. I'm sure you know, like people don't like talking about money. Money's a fascinating thing. And actually, I think hearing different people from different kind of, I guess, financial backgrounds or present stances in life talk about money is really helpful, really your understanding of how to develop your own situation. And I think taking that step back had a knock-on effect of thinking, and I'm sure you experienced this too. Okay, well, how can I do this? What's the dream? What's the dream where I can do what I love and make money? And it pushes you and it forces you to achieve. And yeah, I actually think, what is it in Friends where they say she doesn't have the fear because she doesn't want to quit being a waitress at Central Park. And then she quits and she's like, oh my God. And then she gets the fear. And then after a long prolonged period.
We have 2 episodes.
And Joshua. she gets there because she has the fear. And I do actually think there is something in that.
Can you talk to me a little bit about, before we move on, because I'm obviously fully subscribed to the idea that lifting weights feels freaking excellent.
It's the best.
Feel my bicep.
I always feel like,
this one's great. This one's a bit...
Yeah, I know. That's like my boobs breastfeeding.
It's like at night sometimes I'll just like flex my leg and like give my quad a good
You're
squeeze.
Like, yeah.
Like, you're not right in the head. But okay.
I love it. I love it.
For some people listening to this, they might still, and let's face it, a lot of women do think about weight training as well. Oh, I don't want to bulk up.
Oh, please.
Now, you and I are both on message, but I think that for me, developing physical strength translates into mental strength.
100%.
And so, like last year when I said I've never been able to do a press up, I've reached 45. I'm nearly 45. I need to know whether I
thought you meant press ups then. I was like, that's really good, babe. Carry on.
I'm 45 years old and going to be 45 years old this year. Do I want to never do a press up? Because it feels like when you get to certain ages, you sort of think it's crunch time.
Babe, you need a better bucket list. Honestly.
But it was and I thought I want to be able to do a press up.
Fair.
And actually, what I got from doing the press-ups was if I show up every day and consistent with the effort that I put into something and start as a beginner and I'm humble enough to go back and be the person who's doing press-ups against the wall, standing up and progress, the only element in addition to that I need is time, and I will get there.
Yeah.
And there's something really peaceful about those component parts of reaching your goal. But with the weight element of it, it totally is. I am physically stronger, but those component parts have made me mentally stronger too.
100%. A lot of therapists liken it to a lot of people who suffer with anxiety disorders really benefit from training and cooking. It's this kind of methodology of putting one step in front of the other, building something bit by bit, piece by piece, in the end to create something fantastic. And now I really hate it, and I really fight against it with my clients where they're like, I know food is for fuel. I'm like, bullshit. There's nothing wrong with comfort eating to an extent. Why do you think we have this restaurant culture? You know, you go out, you sit down, you're cooked for. It's lovely. You know, you have people say they go home and they have a nice home cooked meal. It feels nice. And you obviously you get that from cooking and you get that comfort from that. But it's also in terms of weightlifting, you know, I've already talked about kind of being present, feeling strong, feeling mentally accomplished as well as physically accomplished. But having such a positive impact on your body that you are doing for you. and I think a lot of us, all of us, especially after all the lockdowns, can relate to not treating your body very well for a period of time. I think a lot of people either stopped exercising or over-exercised, or a lot of people drank too much, me, or a lot of people actually let certain mental health disorders that they had not let, that's definitely the wrong word, but saw certain mental health disorders they had kind of come to the fore. It's a lot harder doing something good for you than it is doing something bad for you. A lot harder. And I think it gives you such a sense.
Hit me right between the eyes, sorry.
No, it's true though, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think it gives you such a sense of self-worth in your own ability to take care of you. Like, oh, I can do this. It changed me. It changed my life. And it changed many people's lives. You know, it's so funny. This sentence makes me sound like such a knob, but I have to say this. So I went on Celebrity Pointless with James the other day, and like he asked everyone to introduce themselves, and he was like, "What do you do?" And I was like, "Oh, you know, I write books," and like kind of like almost like I was with loads of celebrities. Like, I'm not in the public eye anymore, really. Like, I do what I'm a coach. I'm a face-to-face PT. I'm an online PT coach. I'm a health and fitness author, broadcaster. I was just like, I don't belong here. Like, this is not my world anymore. And I was like, and he was like, "Oh, so what got you into it?" And I just like giggled, and I was like, "Oh, you know, I lifted up a weight and it changed my life." And I heard myself and I started laughing. And he was like, "Anyway," I moved on to the next person, who I think was Charlene Thingy from ITV News. Anyway, James was like, "You just sounded like you made yourself sound like such an idiot." And I was like, because I heard myself, and I understand when I'm out of my environment, my echo chamber, my goldfish bowl, it sounds utterly ridiculous what I'm saying. Oh, you know, picked up a weight, changed my life. In my echo chamber, in my goldfish bowl, everyone knows what I'm talking about. Yeah. But it was really embarrassing. And now I'm absolutely dreading, talk about anxiety, just dreading it coming out. And everyone was going to watch it and be like, "Who is this girl? What's wrong with her?"
Are you hoping that they'll just edit it out?
I really hope they edit it out. So bad.
But I think it's really difficult to explain. Yeah, it is difficult. But I also think that you have this unique position of you walked away and yet it doesn't take much for you to make the news. And I'm talking about the sidebar of shame here. You will do a social media post about breastfeeding and boom, within 18 hours, it is up and it is shared in a way, and you are written about in a way that doesn't come from a kind place, it seems.
No, God, no. Do you know what's so interesting? Right. I'm not really in the public eye anymore, although that might change a little bit in the coming months. I'm not really in the public eye anymore, and I haven't been for years, especially since, like, I would say, when was the first lockdown? March 2020. And I promoted a book from my kitchen, literally, like, lucky that it was a cookbook. I promoted a book from my kitchen in the January 2021 kind of book PR machine that I had to promote it in. I did it, you know, on my iPhone in my kitchen. I didn't do any of the TV shows, didn't do any of the circuits. Also, a lot of the female mainstream media don't want to touch me because they think that my messaging's bad, which couldn't be more wrong. But we are in a self-love, self-acceptance movement now.
Makes note to come back to that.
Makes note to that. We're in a self-love, self-acceptance movement now, and they don't want to see a blonde girl who's kind of in shape talking about why women should change their bodies, right? You know, in our context, we know that means weightlifting, you know, taking care of your body. To them, they see it as body shaming. And it's not of the fashion. It's not. And that's why I personally think, and I actually have had a very prominent male in our industry come in at me and about this. But I think that in the mainstream media, if you want to be successful in the health and fitness space, you're going to have a lot better luck at it if you're a man. It doesn't sit well having another woman, especially if she's young, blonde, Richard and Judy's daughter, you know, likes to pose in her underwear on Instagram, sit there and talk about what you should be doing, like what you should be eating, So I actually think the mainstream media space is wide open for men. And I think the only female who'll conquer that space is a female who is solely coming at her body from self-love and self-acceptance. I can't remember where I was going with this, but I'm having fun.
Talking about you being picked up, like your Instagram posts.
So I wasn't doing the mainstream media route, and I haven't in about 3 years, and I find it utterly fascinating that I'm still tabloid fodder. I don't understand why. Maybe it's because my dad's still doing GMB. It's the only thing I can think. I'm still tabloid fodder. And I venture to guess half the people reading the Sidebar of Shame now have no idea who my parents even are, let alone me. But it's crazy. And also when you read the comments underneath them, and by the way, those comment sections should be shut the fuck down. And I have never, ever so strongly felt anything about the media or the press. And I feel a lot of things about them very strongly. We talked about my weighty chip on my shoulder. Never believed something so vehemently as I believe that. Shut them down. They are online forums for mass bullying of the worst kind to be celebrated and to amass and to grow like this horrible cancer. It makes me sick. And the amount of crap I get underneath it. And I'm just like, James is always like, why'd you look? And I'm like, he thinks, someone once said to him, and if you read negative comments about yourself, it's a form of self-harm. And he's carrying that with him. And like, that's now his like drum. I'm like, I actually find it very interesting. I don't just do it with me. I do it. If you have a look at like what they write under Taylor Swift or the Kardashians, or it's horrific. It shows the worst kind of humanity. Now, a lot of people be like, oh, poor, rich celebrities. It's actually what it represents on a much bigger scale. And believe me, this is a trickle-down effect, right? And I just find it fascinating that anyone is remote. They're not. I don't actually believe that anyone is interested in me, but they are. The tabloid press are, and the trolls are, which I don't really think is much. And again, sorry if this sounds, I don't know, self-important. I don't think it's about me. I think it's about them.
I think any trolling tends to be about the poster, not the person they're posting 100%.
About. 100%.
But I also think the comment section give a far better temperature of the state of the world than the woke media bubble.
My mum says
what people
this.
are talking about and how people are talking.
Yeah, my mum says this, and I find that really disturbing. But she said the same thing. I think she found online journalism but a week ago. And she finally put her copy of the Times
down. Findings.
I know, yeah. And she read something about Bojo, and she was reading all the comments under it, and she was like, it's actually a really good reflection of the mood of the country. And I was like, please don't say that.
Well, when the Brexit referendum was happening, I was in London. And so you couldn't move in London without people saying,
oh, no.
Remain, Remain, Remain.
Yeah.
And so it was a real shock to me. My parents live out in Kent. And as you'd get further down the M20, you'd be like, I don't think it seems like, yeah. And the second you left London, it was leave, leave, leave.
100%. Yeah, of course. It's really interesting. I think, well, I mean, maybe we shouldn't venture too deep into politics. I don't want to give myself another cross to bear. I find it very interesting that, I mean, yeah, I was born and raised in Manchester, as you said in the intro, grew up in London. I have a very, I guess, in a way, expected, typical view on politics and society, being a multicultural city girl. But it never fails to shock and amaze me when I, even like, you know what, when I went to uni in Leeds, some of the, I mean, I remember once saying to, weirdly, I don't know why, all my friends were from Hartlepool, like all of them. I made like 10 Hartlepool friends, Hartlepoolians. Anyway, and is that like...
I now need to know whether it's Hartlepoolians.
And I remember, because I'm, again, like live in northwest London, which is a very, very Jewish area. I remember being like, oh, yeah, I think I just said in passing, like, oh, yeah, explaining something about Friday night dinner, maybe. All my friends are Jewish. I'm like the resident non-Jew in my group of friends. And then being like, oh my God, you know Jewish people? And me being like, what the? Even that question alone, I was like, are you serious? And that was the first time I really got a whiff of it. And obviously then you grow up and you have bigger life experiences. And it is crazy to me, the complete polarized views as soon as you leave a big city area and you go outside of it. I find it quite scary, but then I actually just think that's probably quite an ignorant comment, because if I was born and raised in, I don't know, Berkshire, then maybe I'd be the same.
I just sort of always think it's just the woke media bubble.
Do you?
Because the people that in my media life, the people talk in a way that you just simply don't experience elsewhere.
Yeah.
So I just sort of think, woke media bubble.
Fair.
Which is a thing. I'm going to ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well you think you cope with the things in life that you can't control.
Unbelievably badly. Like, this is James's biggest pet peeve about me. Like, if I can't control something, I have a meltdown. I feel so overwhelmed by everything in my life that's in my control. How do you think I feel when I get a curveball? It's awful.
So I asked you this because I asked you if there's an obstacle that you had to overcome. And you've referenced your parents, but you said it was the anxiety that came with being your parents' daughter.
Yeah, I have the best parents in the whole world. And I'm so lucky. I don't want people listening like, oh, boo-hoo. Like, I'm so lucky. They're intelligent, they're successful, they're fantastic parents, they're loving, they're kind, they're generous, yet they forced me to work. They never gave me anything. And in terms of like, a flat, a car or whatever, what people I'm sure would expect. But... yeah, I was, how old was I? 18. And my mum, they never bought me anything. Immediately follow up with, my mum, for my 18th birthday, bought me a Maria Graschvogel dress. I don't know if she's still a thing, but she was a thing.
She was a thing.
She was a thing.
Yeah.
It was this like peacock, it was like this silk printed dress, like a peacock, multicolored. It was beautiful. And my mum couldn't go to an event. She got ill. And I was 18 and my dad was like, do you want to come with me? And I said, yes, of course. I want to come with you. There's going to be cameras there and celebrities there and, free alcohol, which I will down while Dad's not looking. Like he cares. He was probably handing me glasses of champagne. And I went, and because I was 18 and my dad was a household name and I was blonde and it was a very low cut semi-sheer dress, obviously the flash bulbs went off and I was like, well, I look the tits, right? I was fine with this. It's fine. Although it's still to this day, when I see a paparazzi, I just start completely like shaking like this. It's awful. And I was like, it's fine. And that's where it started. I remember it vividly. I remember walking into the taxi and then putting the lenses down my dress. And that's where it started. And at the time, it was all fun and games until the tabloids throw you to the wolves. And then we were off. We were just off to the races. It was everything that I did was, I don't know, like everything that was kind of, I guess, negative or not, not gleaming light of Rich and Judy's daughter wants to be a doctor, was just everywhere all the time. And I was young still, really young. And yeah, and the word nepotism was being thrown at me constantly. I mean, absolutely constantly, especially by the Daily Mail. And shock. and it's like I say, when Twitter started, I joined Twitter. How old must I have been? Maybe 19. Oh my God. Talk about the comment section of the Daily Mail. I mean, Twitter is just the living, breathing
cesspit.
Yeah, cesspit of that. If that's stagnant, Twitter is the very real minute by minute breath that it's taking. And it was overwhelming and it was awful and it was horrible. And then, of course, I crashed my car. I got done for drink driving, of course, during a time where, again, like I say, the Paris Hiltons and the this and the this. No one was hurt, thank God. I was fine. Everybody was, and I was very, very minorly over the limit, but that was it. It was like hunting season, and it just saw a huge, huge decline of my mental health. And it was mad. Like, it was on the front page of every tabloid newspaper when the Evening Standard found out. I immediately got the call from my agent at the time. I don't have an agent now because I don't work in the industry anymore. And he was like, you need to like get out the house, go. So I left. My brother called me an hour later. I was like, where are you? I was like, I'm on my way to the airport because my mum and dad were in France. I was like, I'm just going to go there for a day or two till it calms down. He was like, Chloe, can I just please reiterate this? I was just my parents' daughter. Like, it made... and it was off the back of this that I even ended up getting Dancing on Ice because the coverage was so crazy. He was like, I can't get into the road. Like, it was the lead story on the ITV Evening News. I was the front page of every tabloid, and the Daily Mail for like, I think it was like a full 2 weeks, wrote a double page spread about me. And it was awful. It was absolutely fucking savage. And it ruined my mental health. And it just was horrific. And I was like, I was just a kid and I was a fucking idiot. But I thought I was fine. I wasn't fine. And I paid the price for that, you know, and I went to court and everything happened. But that was the beginning of it. And from there, it just was just like this, like I say, and dancing on ice, panic attack. Oh, maybe it's you know, performance anxiety, and then a breakup, and it was just like, you know, and you spiral down a ribbon, and it just all came tumbling down. Before I knew it, I was a fucking mess. So yeah, it was my fault because I made a mistake. But man alive, was it as a young woman, as a young girl, really, man alive, was it an onslaught for me mentally.
It's interesting because when you wrote that and said, being my parents' daughter, I honestly thought you would talk about being a lot younger. I can't imagine what it must have, because your parents, to me, it's not just that they're famous, they're familiar. Mm-hmm. If I was in the room with them, it wouldn't, like even my physical boundaries with them would probably be different, because
you know them.
I'd think nothing of like snuggling up to Judy.
She's a good cuddler.
Well, this the thing is just the familiarity. They were very much like when I should have been in university lectures, I was not. I was watching This Morning.
Oh, you're a whole generation. I hear it all the time.
So there's the fame element of it, but there's the familiarity. And I assumed you were going to say growing up was difficult with them as people who were famous and so familiar to people.
No, it was fun. It was fun. It was, you know, I was a very little girl, you know, people dressed up as the Flintstones on This Morning on Albert Dock in Liverpool. And as a slightly older girl, it was, oh my God, I'm going to go meet the Spice Girls. And as a young teenage girl, it was, holy fuck, there's Britney Spears. It was fun. It was everything I wanted it to be and more. It was brilliant. And it was, you know, Little Britain blowing up overnight, and David Walliams and Matt Lucas coming over for Sunday lunch next day. It was, are you kidding? As a teenager, as somebody like who thinks she's a Spice Girl, is Britney Spears' biggest fan. It was a dream come true. It was when I was old enough to be, I guess, I know exactly what I'm trying to say, to be fair game. Mm. And when I was old enough and like I say, a dawning of social media, of Twitter specifically, which is hell on earth, and why I'm not on Twitter anymore, even though it's probably a detriment to my career. I won't go back on it. The dawning of social media, turning 18, 19, being my parents' daughter, them still being on television at the time, fair game. And that was it. That was when it became, I mean, just horrifically difficult to navigate mentally, and my own fault again. Like I say, in my head, going into television was very much like a natural progression from like I say, schooling. They were absolutely feeding into the monster.
I'm just curious about how people treated you though, like people in your class, because I hear about people I know who have a profile whose kids go to school. The teachers are very aware that the parents are famous. Yeah. The other kids then treat that child differently. Did you ever have any of that? Were you ever?
No, I'm extremely lucky in that where I went to school, there are a lot of celebrity children. And my parents were absolutely categorically not the most famous people who had kids there. And so it was very normal. And I think that was intentional. And my friends were fucking awesome. Like when at the NTAs, when my mum's dress fell down, how old was I? I must have been 17. I think I was 17. I might be wrong. My friends got up early, all went into school, didn't tell me, all went into school like an hour before school started. They got all the newspapers from the staff room. How old was I? I don't know. Got all the newspapers from the staff room, went into the library, got all the newspapers from the library, basically took all the newspapers out of the school.
Because it was front page.
It was front page. I mean, I didn't care. Mum didn't care. Nobody cared. I mean, the irony that John Leslie was the one to zip her up. It was no, I didn't care. Like we were fine. My family are very mentally, well, apart from me, clearly, mentally, emotionally strong unit. We're a unit. We were fine. Everything was fine. But my friends are fucking awesome. So it's fine. Uni was interesting. Like I say, that was an eye opener. Yeah. Coming out of London, going to Leeds, and obviously very much being Richard and Judy's daughter was very, very interesting experience. But I had a great time at uni.
Obviously, your relationship with your friends and family, and from what you've just said, but also listening to you on the EC Method podcast, you talk about your friends and your family in such a brilliant way. It's obvious how important they are to you, but also how much work you all put into it, remaining and continuing to be as strong as those bonds are. And so when I asked you about what your biggest challenges that you faced to date, it was when that might have been in some jeopardy, when there was just so much going on, so many balls in the air, and trying to maintain relationships with all of those people whilst moving on to, whilst including work and all of those sorts of things.
I can force myself to stay on top of work even when it gets so overwhelming, and when you're self-employed, that's quite difficult. And I want to seek refuge and support in my family, and that's and my relationship. My social life is, without a doubt, and all of my friends will tell you this, the ball that I drop the most often, and the thing that I find the hardest to maintain. And the thing that I vow every time I pick it back up again, I'm never going to do it again, because it makes me feel so much stronger and more sane and more loved and more normal. I really struggle with overwhelm. I do not understand how people are on WhatsApp all day, every day.
I know you hate WhatsApp.
Hate it. To me, it makes me feel sick. As soon as I go to open it, I'm like, here we go. And I know that I'm going to spend a significant portion now of my time responding to every single person. And by the time I finally got back to everyone's replied to me. And it's like this never ending. I don't understand how other people don't get it. I'm like, do you not get it? The WhatsApp, like, how do you feel about WhatsApp?
Maybe I don't use it as much as you.
No, I don't. I literally,
or
maybe that's why.
Maybe I communicate with too many people over too many different platforms. So like Instagram DM is I hate Instagram DM.
Oh no, me too. Hate it.
But I love a WhatsApp. I love a voice note. I like an email, but it's like I've categorized. So emails are very much work.
But 100%. And now everyone's working on WhatsApp.
Oh yeah, no, that I don't care for.
I mean, I'm like, fuck off, get back onto email. Friends should be text messages and phone calls only. WhatsApp can go ahead and die.
See, no, I appreciate WhatsApp. Also, I like the groups, because I have like a reality TV group, the Cohen Clubhouse, because we watch Bravo.
What do you watch?
All of Bravo.
I mean, I just love that you have this.
But the thing is that, so quite a few of them in Australia, some are in America, and then we've got the London chapter.
So it's nice.
So when a show goes...
You need your own reality show on Bravo. The London chapter.
The London chapter of the Cohen Clubhouse. So the Australians will watch the episode first whilst the London chapter are asleep, feedback and say, keep an eye out for this. And then we'll wake up and we'll be like, oh yeah. And so it's just this constant, it's one of my most favorite things.
I love that. That's really cute.
So I love WhatsApp for the groups that you can create. And I know that you can do that in other formats. But for me, it's very casual. It's very social. It's the conversations you could be having face to face over dinner.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, I love my family WhatsApp group. We've got a good, bad rugby WhatsApp group, which I love and I'll always respond to. We've got a family WhatsApp group, which I love and always respond to. Every other group, no. Just mute, archive, pretend it's not there.
Noted.
It's awful.
Noted. So okay, you do one-to-one coaching. Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe that's being phased out. But you went back to work 8 weeks after having a baby.
Oh, God. Worst thing I ever did.
Bodhi, thank you for naming your baby the name that I wanted to call my baby after watching Point Break.
Sorry. Oh my God, yes.
No, I'm never going to have a baby. And it's always, when I watch Point Break, I was like, if I ever have a kid, male or female, I'm calling it Bodhi.
Well, it is a gender neutral name. It literally means enlightenment, new life, Buddhists pray to the Bodhi tree. It's not, everyone's like, it's a boy's name. I'm like, it's not a fucking boy's name.
It's not.
Even if it was, why do you care? Let me call my child what I want to call my child.
So when you announced it, I was just so happy.
Someone used my name.
Someone used the name. Yeah, you watch Point Break once, fall in love with Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves, and you're like, right.
I mean, think about it, right? The best films in the world are heist films. Mm-hmm. And then they made it a surfer heist film with Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves.
That's Johnny Utah.
Stop, Johnny Utah. You know when he's like, whatever. No, I'll just do all the quotes and like. And
you're about to go, I am an FBI agent, aren't you?
No, I was going to do the two things when he does Nixon and he goes, I am not a crook. And then the other one when he's like, he grabs that guy's hair to get like his DNA sample. Mm. And he was like, there's a bug in your hair. I saved your life, bro. I just love it. Everyone needs to watch Point Break.
See, I love Seriously War Child. He's with me.
Oh, very good. Very good. War Child. Scary.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Talk about a tangent.
I know.
But anyway, yes, so you went back to work 8 weeks after having a baby. Mm-hmm. Thank you for calling her Bodhi. And so with coaching, with the one-to-one, with the work that you do, it's extremely giving. And so saying how important your relationships are with your friends, your family, and your husband, plus you've got people who you're coaching one-on-one, plus I see how much effort you put into the EC method, and it might be online coaching, but it's very
hands-on.
It's very hands-on. Like if you post, say you're a bit confused about what dumbbell to buy next, maybe that was me, and you say, what dumbbell should I buy next? You are in there and you're answering, like you and Emma are very good. So there's a lot of giving. And it's the overwhelm, the fact that you will give to others and not yourself. And that's where the disconnect happens.
I think it's really interesting, actually. You think you've nailed it. I think it's, there's an influx all day, every day of tags, messages. And it's funny, whenever we talk to, especially men who make a lot of money about the EC method, they're like, obviously you just hire a team of people to do it for you, like, and I won't name names, but like the biggest male coaches in our industry do. Yeah. And our USP, if you like, is no, we coach ourselves. We source out the tax, the finances. We source out the tech. We do not fucking source out the coaching. It's called the EC method. Worst name ever. It's called the EC method because it's Emma and Chloe, third person. It's called the EC method because it's our coaching. And you look at the other big coaches in our industry who are not doing the coaching themselves, but they are making a pretty penny off their name. And I just think it's unacceptable. I just do. And so does Emma. So we coach. And what comes with that is, as I said, an influx of, for my one-to-ones, it's emails. From the EC method, it's Facebook tags. Then you have your WhatsApp groups where everyone's working now. All my friends are, all the groups are. And then you have your text messages where slightly older people will flow in, and me, by the way, big fan of the old text message. And then I have my Instagram DMs, and I've got like just shy of 300,000 followers. And go, look, and then, mate, I think it's got a lot to do with it.
And a baby.
So I realized this very quickly. I was already struggling for all the reasons I've said. And I just also want to add that it's a great privilege that I love my job. And I am, as I hope everyone's picked up so far, I'm so fucking grateful that I found this, and that I wouldn't be able to do it if I didn't have the audience that I have and I didn't have the clients that I have. So huge
Can
gratitude.
I say something else there? Because one of the things that I'm really aware of as someone who has been on the EC method and engages in your content is you are constantly learning, you and Emma. Like no piece of research is going to come out and be live for more than 24 hours without you having read it and applied it and maybe adapted your coaching, which I think is a real testament to how seriously you take it.
Yeah, thank you. And that's not without huge effort and constant fear and anxiety that we're going to say something, we're going to get something wrong, something that's been debunked that maybe came out while we were on the live, which happens. While we're answering a question about it. So we really keep on top of it. And the beauty is Emma and I were interested in very different fields. So I love the physique space, and that's the narcissistic vein, how do I look space. But it's the science of it that I love, so I don't even care. Emma is much more entrenched in actually really quite specialist subjects, whether it's, I don't know, lifestyle kind of cancer recovery treatment, or things like diabetes. That was her come up, really. That's what kind of parlayed her into doing what she does now. I'm obviously now pre and postnatal qualified. Emma's just done 2 different courses in menopause, I guess, considerations when coaching. So we are both very across our field in a vast spectrum. And I appreciate you saying that because it's hard work. It's not easy. But yeah, it's very overwhelming. And I think when I had Bodhi, I really realized I have part-time childcare because I need the childcare to work, but I also want to be with my daughter. She's still very young. She's only 6 months. And I'm completely obsessed with her. And I tried, because I work from home and I'm self-employed, to have her and coach, which I do pretty much all day, every day. And she's screaming for me and she's not well. And I'm sad and anxious and nervous and I want to help her and I can't. And I've got one of my clients, asking me if it's possible that she's gained a pound of body fat overnight, which, we all know because we've had the chat 1,000 times. It's not possible. Your body doesn't work like that. And I suddenly realized I was having serious compassion fatigue because this much more visceral connection over here that needs me is screaming for me. And I was like, oh, fuck, I can't coach and be a mum at the same time. Like, I will not be a good coach, nor will I be a good mum. I can't do this. So now on the days when I have Bodhi, I don't even attempt to talk to clients because I'm not a good coach and I won't be a good mum. On the days where I don't have Bodhi, I'm so grateful for the outlet of being a coach and my clients and the conversations that I love to have and that I'm so well informed in at this point. I know that sounds like I'm tooting my own horn, but it's true. And I get a huge kick out of that. So it's definitely a big learning curve.
Was it also the first time you had to put that boundary in place? Because I think especially women, although that is a vast generalization, but tend to be shapeshifters and load bearers.
I agree.
And just take on more and more and more without letting anything go.
I agree.
So was that the first time you had shifted gears in a way where you said things can't be done simultaneously?
Yeah, I think you're right. You load bear and you manage and you manage and you manage. Same thing could be said when I started to get anxiety. But yeah, and I agree. I think you're right. I know it's such a huge generalization, but I agree. I think women are like that. We're multitaskers. It's what we do. And then something changes, like the straw that broke the camel's back. And for me, it was that visceral tie and connection and paramount importance that is my daughter. And it, like I say, it's visceral. I don't even have to think about it. It's just there. And it just like a firework just goes smack. When she's crying, everyone else can fuck off. It's that simple. And yeah, it hit me hard. And I was like, oh, okay, something has to give. And it is giving, as I've kind of intimated. And I'm shifting gears a bit in a way that's going to allow me to spend more time with her at this young age. You know, she's not going to be this little forever. Less time on kind of client work. And it needed a shift. And like we talked about, I think I opened the gates for that to take place, and it's starting to take place, and I'm very grateful.
Okay, that's really good. Okay, so let's talk curveballs then. How good are you at handling a curveball?
No. No. If I can't control it, there's a problem. I told you, like, I really struggle with overwhelm. I think people say this word now, like, I don't know, maybe it's like a word of the moment or kind of like a humorous thing. Like, it's a problem. Like, it's really hard it's debilitating. When I feel like I can't catch my breath and I have this 1,000 different things all happening at once. It's probably why I hate WhatsApp. And it's just... like fight or flight. I'm like, no, it's fight, flight, or freeze. I'm a freezer.
Yeah. Yes.
I freeze. I'm just like, it's the worst.
I've definitely in the last 6 months experienced overwhelm in a way that I have for a really long time. And what happens is I try to outwardly look like I'm not overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But often what happens is I talk absolute nonsense. People ask me a question. I'll be like, yeah. And I'm answering them in order to answer them.
Yeah. I said that to Emma this morning about coming on this podcast. I was like, sometimes I'll get asked like big questions, which I know that you ask, which is fucking fantastic. And I don't know how to answer it. So I just talk bollocks and it's so transparent and it's so awful. And I was just like, yeah, that 100% manifests in the exact same way for me too.
Almost like cotton mouth. And then you realize you've left someone, you're like, I've just said some really misleading things to them.
Yeah, I've misrepresented myself so badly.
And I'm not a fake person. Like if you ask me a question, I will
same.
Bring you the truth.
Yeah.
And so to realize that the overwhelm is manifesting in just sort of saying something for the sake of saying it.
Yeah.
But not saying the truth because I can't handle it.
We used to do this on the EC method when someone would ask a question and we didn't really know the answer because there's a lot of women with a lot of very specific questions. Like, what was the one we got recently? I can't even remember. I think it was on like MS and L-carnitine. It was really complicated. And we got asked this really random left of field question, which neither of us knew how to answer. This was way back when we started. And we just tried to like bollocks talk our way out of it. And afterwards she was like, did you know the answer? I was like, no, neither of us knew the answer. And I said to her, next time we just have to say, I don't know. She was like, 100%. No, we do. Well, I don't know. Let me go and read up on it. Because we don't know everything.
Or please, can you share a little bit more information for context?
Yeah, you know what? Tag us in a post, give me some info. By the time you've done that, I can look over the broad spectrum of what you're asking. And together, this is what being a good coach is. You've got to be malleable with your audience. And I'll come back and I'll apply the science because reading scientific review is really hard. Reading scientific literature is really hard.
There's a book on how to read scientific review.
Is there? Yes. That's really interesting. So it's like, I'll go away and do that. That's my job. Then you, in the meantime, are going to tell me everything. So I've got the context. I'm going to come back with this information. I'm going to read your context. I'm going to make it applicable for you as a client. And that's what makes you a good coach. And it all starts with saying, I don't know. And I think, again, a lot of people are not comfortable saying those 3 words, but you have to, or you won't grow, guys.
It's so true. And actually the relief you feel when you actually say,
I don't know.
Oh,
you're free. It's the best.
I don't know what I'm expecting. I think I used to be scared of saying I don't know for a long time because I thought people would be like, oh, well, I won't ask you again.
You're stupid.
Yeah.
I get that too. Again, being my parents' daughter, because they're so wildly intelligent and well informed on everything. I spent my whole life terrified that everyone would think I was stupid, which they did.
So when it comes to your specific curveball that we are going to discuss, you talked about how much your life changed when James retired.
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, that was mad. It's still to this day, I've still not adapted, neither is he. It's so funny, like we had this, I'm a real domestic, this again, to go woo-woo, I'm a Cancerian, so I'm really domestic and I like being at home, and I fucking am, and I do. And so we had this really nice life where James was a rugby player, kind of Monday through Saturday. Sunday was always home, whiskey, Domino's pizza. Like our Sunday was like our fun day together. Films on TV, absolutely no work. And then Monday through Saturday, both of us would be in the gym, training, accomplishing things, achieving goals. He would come home from training at like 4, like rugby players start early and they finish early. So he'd come home at like 4 p.m. every day. And we'd have evenings together. I'd cook us dinner. We just had this lovely, lovely lifestyle. And then he retired, and everyone, it's in the rugby world especially, has been like, God, you're so lucky that James is like Dick Van Dyke. He literally has 17 jobs, and he's like a street painter one day, and he's in a band the next day, and he's like, I don't know, flying a kite the next day, whatever, chimney sweep, all of them. And you're so lucky that you don't have that fear that when he retires, he's going to stop making an income or get depressed because there's nothing for him to do, et cetera, et cetera. Actually, you know what that's a brilliant thing about James, is that he retired and he just went on to his 17 other 1,000 projects. But that came hugely at the expense of what I loved about our relationship, was this domesticity and this real kind of Monday to Saturday, I should say, like drive, accomplish. And then this Sunday, like home together and obviously dinners and stuff. Now, I would say I see James maybe 2 nights a week. And if I'm lucky, not at the moment because of the Six Nations, I'll get a Sunday with him. And it's horrific. Like, because it is not what I signed up for. Definitely not how I want my domestic and kind of marital life to be. But he's so fucking happy. He's got 2 residences in Ibiza this summer. So he's going to be flying to and from Ibiza from May through to September. He's on tour right now doing his own little stand-up tour. That was so patronising. It is a little stand-up. He's doing little venues, and it's just him going around and doing a little stand-up tour versus Good Bag Rugby Tour, which I think starts next month, and that's a big tour. And then, I mean, it is just like, it's never ending, and he's so happy, and he's, you know, doing great in terms of his career. Like, I would say since he retired, I think he's more probably well known and successful in a way since he's retired than he was before, and that's fantastic, and he's happy, and that's great. But yeah, that's been a huge adjustment, and I'm not adjusted yet at all.
But that to me makes me feel overwhelmed listening to it.
Oh, it's horrific.
It was what you had before was routine. You know what the week was going to look like, and there's a certain amount of mental safety in knowing what the next 7 days are going to look like. And if every week is different, that's going to add to the existing things that are inconsistent. Yeah.
No, I really, also this thing, so James has ADHD, which has a lot to do with it. So he can't focus on one thing at one time. And if he does, well, he can't. His focus will shift. Like, he'll be halfway through unloading the dishwasher and then there'll be plates and cups everywhere where they're kind of in the kind of ish region where they're meant to go, and there's still some stuff in there. And then he's in his office DJing, and I'm like, like, I'm a box ticker, okay? This is how I thrive. But he thrives in chaos, and I don't. And it is, without a doubt, when you ask that question in that question now, it's like 100% the biggest adjustment that I've had to make. Yeah. And I'm, like I say, still not there. Even bigger than having Bodhi. Like, even more like overwhelming than that.
Have you had to almost grieve the life that you had before?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely every day. I'm still grieving. Yeah, definitely. Loads of people, I'm sure, can relate when you have to move for your partner, or, you know, your partner changes jobs or something happens. I mean, I think there's a significant portion of people out there who don't talk about this, but who regret having children. And which obviously is like the worst thing you can say and people don't talk about it. I'm very lucky that I'm not in that camp, but I spent my whole third trimester terrified that I would be. It's a lot, a lot of people can relate. It's a big change when you're not someone who likes change is difficult.
How do you cope with the change then? Is it thinking about this will even out or it'll look like this in the future? Is it a case of, well, it's not how it was, now is kind of turbulent, so focusing on what it could potentially be in the future? Is that grounding?
No, it's compassion and being a supportive partner. If James even tried for a second to tell me what to do with my life, we'd have a big problem. So just because he's doing something that I don't like and makes me feel quite uncomfortable and like lonely at times, which is part of the reason why I was so insistent when I got pregnant, we moved back to London. He's happy and he's thriving and I love him. And love is selfless. I don't know if you've heard. So I just have to kind of pat him on the back and say, good for you. Keep going. By the way, I hate this. Just remember, I hate this. So if you're ever ready to stop. But until then, go. And that's how I deal with it.
That seems really fair. Because you're being really clear about your feelings, but you're also allowing him the space to do what he wants to do.
I do feel a bit guilty. Like I do, as much as he feels guilty, being like, I just booked 2 residencies in Ibiza that are going to take me, May, June, like 5 months. 5 months to complete. And I know that he feels guilty bringing that to my door. I feel guilty that he feels guilty. And that I'm not like, crip walking in high tops, bum shorts around a pool in Ibiza with, plaits and sparkly face gear and like, yeah, fuck yeah. I'm like, oh God.
Do you know what? It's really beautiful. It reminds me of a couple of friends of mine. Obviously, COVID was horrible for lots of people.
Yep.
And a friend of mine, when everything relaxed, just said to her husband, if you get work, take it. Don't consult with me.
Just go.
You couldn't work for 2 years.
Yep.
So if you get it, if it's offered, take it.
100%.
I'll support you.
Yeah, I think completely. And that, rings true for me as well. Keeping James, I talk about ADHD, Dick Van Dyke, keeping him locked up in the house for that. I mean, wow. And I vividly remember him being like, is it okay if I don't come home for we have a rule now, it doesn't work. But, the intention's there that if he's gone more than 3 nights without coming home, on night 4, he'll come home. And I remember him being like, do you mind it? And I was like, no, just take it. Like, you have to, look, guys, part of you have to grow up at some point and realize that your marriage is about compromise. And that's how you both find happiness. And like I say, turning the tables on you. If James was like, no, I don't want you to do another round of the easy method, I'd be like, fuck you, I'm going to do it. Do you know what I mean? It's, it's being a grown up.
Yeah. That's a good way of looking at it. What would happen if he said the same thing to you?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well, I think that listeners will know that you're very self-aware.
I talk way too much.
As much as you analyse the science papers, you also, I think, analyse your behaviour and try to make good choices. So talk to me about a time when you were wrong.
What did I give you on the questionnaire? So
this goes back to the anxiety disorder and about your dad's input. And the fact that you thought that you could handle it all on your own and it would all be okay.
Yeah. And you know what? I wonder how many people out there, I made this my mission for a while. I don't know how many people out there, and I doubt anyone listening to this podcast, because you do such a fantastic job of shining a light on taking care of your mental health in every element. You should be so proud of what you do.
Thank you.
I don't know how many people out there are in this headspace of, I know there's something wrong, but it's okay. I can handle it. I knew that I wasn't sleeping. Obviously, I was being like violently sick a lot of the time. I was desperately unhappy, spiraling into depression. And I remember for years being like, no, I can handle it. I can handle it. I can handle it. And if it hadn't been, and I was completely wrong, I couldn't handle it. And if it hadn't been for my dad walking into the kitchen that day and literally pulling me up from the floor and saying to me like, enough is enough. I can't help you. You can't help you. There are people, by the way, who can. Let's get them on board. And actually going about it, not procrastinating, sorting it out that morning, booking me in with a therapist and making sure that it was genuinely kind of signed, sealed, delivered for me, because I was incapable of doing it. And I think I was just burying my head in the sand. I honestly, truly don't know where I'd be today. And I've lost friends from who've had really horrible experiences with what's happening kind of outside and also inside their own head. And when it didn't end very well for them, I really struggle because it's kind of like someone's holding up a mirror of what could have been for me. So yeah, I am just forever eternally grateful for my father, who is a very pragmatic, matter-of-fact man, and not like me and my mum, who live in our own heads, being like, oh, this is a problem. Thank God for him.
It sounded then like the mirror that is put in front of you, if it seems like had he not picked you up off the kitchen floor, had you not started that therapy, is there a part of you that thinks that you might not have made it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, it was such a snowball of things that happened over a period of years that kind of culminated in me feeling like I shouldn't, like I just was like the worst, most embarrassing, like most underaccomplished, most ridiculed person. And it was embarrassing for everyone around me. And it was horrible. It was a horrible thing to go through. And like I say, I've had friends in a very similar situation not come out the other side of it, but feeling the exact same way. This is so embarrassing and I'm such a joke. And, you know, social media and the press and all of these things have a lot to do with it. They didn't come through. I remember vividly when certain things have happened, reaching out to people like this and saying like, listen, do not buy into this narrative, whatever you do, you know, and they did, and it didn't end very well. And I'm so grateful that my dad is my dad. And I'm so lucky, you know, I talk about, you know, the anxiety and all the kind of the tough things about being my parents' daughter. At the end of the day, I hit the fucking jackpot. My parents are incredible. Which is funny. And I just honestly, yeah, I just encourage anyone who knows anyone who's going through a hard time. Sometimes I know everyone's like, just ask the question, are you okay? Sometimes it goes beyond that. Sometimes like actual practical action is what's needed. Act, really act. And yeah, because when you really see it go the other way right in front of your eyes, man alive, do you wish you could turn back the clock and do more than you did? And I know that I feel like that with certain things. Yeah, it's important.
Do you feel capable to send the ladder down? And what I mean by that is that sometimes on the road to recovery, you need so much of it for your own recovery that it can be hard sometimes to help someone else. Yeah. Even though you might be able to see very, 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 very clearly that they also need the help that you've got. It's almost like, I'm not robust enough yet to share this.
Give you, yeah. No, when I see people who I love struggling, I feel like it's my duty to help. And actually, like I say, the real struggle comes when it doesn't work. But I do find this interesting. One of my friends is a very accomplished psychologist, and she says that people tend to have two responses when they see other people struggling with the same things they've struggled with. One of two, I should say. One, that they immediately rush to them. They have this kind of compassion and they want to help because they've been there and they recognize it and they want to help. And two, that they feel repulsed by it and they don't want to look at it because they don't want to be reminded of what they've gone through or how to deal with it. And I think that's so true. There are certain things I've gone through and I'm very, very bad with dealing with friends who are going through a horrible breakup or a hard breakup because I'm so scared. Like, that happened really badly for me. That was one of the things that contributed to me having a bit of a spiral. I find it very difficult to be around. But in this case, with kind of, you know, this feeling like you're being hung out to dry and it's getting out of your control and you have completely lost control of the way that your name is being thrown out there or your own narrative, that I feel very, very, very strongly that people need to I feel very defensive of people and myself. Anyone who follows me on social media will know I'm not scared to stick up for myself now. Yeah. So yeah, it's funny. It can go either way, I think.
I think recently there was a post or there was a news article that was written about you based on something you wrote about going back to work and about earning.
Yeah, it's so ridiculous.
And it was taken out of context. In fact, I didn't see what was written, but I believe from what you said, it was taken out of context and it reflected really poorly on James.
Yeah, both of us. That I needed money and that James was like withholding money from me postnatally. Fucking bollocks. All because I said, look, I'm self-employed. We just bought a house in London. We just had a baby. You know, we're furnishing the house. We refurbed the house. These things cost money. Welcome to the real world. Yeah. I'm self-employed, as is James. It got to a point after invoice after invoice after invoice from the builders and, you know, furniture and whatever. It's like, holy shit, I've got to go back to work. And James was like, no, don't go back to work. It's okay. Like, I'll deal with this and when I tell you, okay, I can't. And I was like, no, I don't want it to ever get to that point.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have, because I would have gotten back to work at that point. But I went back to work. And, you know, I'm sure you probably realized I don't have a filter. I'm just pretty much say what comes into my head that feels quote unquote authentic at the time. But it just got translated into Chloe Madeley needs the money with the very strong insinuation, or needs money, I should say, with a very strong insinuation laced throughout that James wasn't providing for us. It's just like, why do I bother with the press? Like, they're still the same. They're never going to change. Why do I bother? And this is why I like social media, on the contrary to other conversations that people in the press like to have. I like it because you can stand up and you can stand up for yourself, and I fucking use it. And who was it? My brother the other day was like, sometimes you just come across like a little bit chippy. And I was like, good, I am. Good. It's like, I'm going to keep going. Because I get so much strength from being able to say the truth.
Is this the brother who's a really successful talent manager?
Yeah.
Right.
Dad, yeah, of course you know that.
So managing other people's careers in the spotlight, I'd be like, would you listen to him maybe?
No, not at all. To me, he's just my stupid older brother. No, my brother's fantastic. I'm very lucky actually. They all give completely different advice and they're all fucking brilliant and I love them. I'm just very lucky to have the family that I have.
Yeah. They're lucky to have you as well. You're excellent.
Thanks, babes.
To close, we've hurtled towards our time limit, if you like. Not that we had a time limit. But to end our conversation, I'm going to ask if you have, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you have more than one, actually. Do you have a motto or a saying that has helped you, and you can have as many as you like,
God,
that you would like to share with listeners to pay forward the benefits that you've experienced from living by them or it?
Oh my gosh. Someone once said to me, this is going to sound, again, people don't like talking about money. But someone once said to me, if I'd listened to what everybody else had to say about me, I wouldn't be a millionaire now. And I really like that because, and you can apply it to any context, it doesn't have to be money. When you feel, and we talked about, you know, the flow and the calling and the angel singing, when you feel very viscerally, very strongly that you should be doing something or you should follow a passion or a love or a, you know, being, like I say with Bodhi, the visceral instinct that I want to be with her more. If you follow that, wonderful things can happen because all you're doing is you're opening up doors and windows all around you to letting this new life that you know you want to live, letting it flow, letting it come to you, letting it happen. And if you, like you on the train, had decided that actually you're going to get into work and get on your hands and knees, beg for forgiveness for falling asleep, showing up 5 hours late, and cracked on, you'd probably be pretty fucking miserable now. So you took the gamble and you did this anyway. So I don't necessarily mean it in the context of money, but in anything. Follow what you know is going to lead you to the best life that you can live. And by the way, I just want to remind everyone, because I'm talking about success here, success isn't necessarily financial. I mean, it's the freedom maybe to be able to go on an extra holiday with your family a year, or, you know, to go home at 6 o'clock at night finally and have dinner with your wife or your husband, or got to buy the, you know, red chair that you love in the really expensive antique shop. I mean, it can literally be anything. I think if you really follow what you know is going to make you happy and serve you well, it will serve you well. So I think that
that's about tuning into what you stand for, I think. And I
agree.
think it's so culturally common to believe that you have to live a certain way and follow a specific path. And that starts in school. And that really disconnects you from your wants, needs, passions, desires.
Completely agree.
And actually it's really important work to do to
Yeah.
get really focused on what it is you want, be really self-aware.
Yeah, what your version of success is. So for James, I think he's very financially driven. And that's fine, fair enough, whatever. He loves attention, loves the microphone, loves the camera. You'll know when he comes on your podcast. He's a peacock and he loves it. That is not me. As much as I just talk about myself. Like I say, I want to be at home. I want to be able to work from home. That for me is success because that's something I want that will make me feel good.
Yeah.
I want to be able to have more time with my daughter because that's something that I want that will make me feel good. I want to be able to, I don't know, travel, and everyone's wants are different. And I definitely think that if you surrender to it, as you said, not if you don't surrender to, I suppose, the societal norms, but if you surrender to what you know is you're going to have so much success. And I truly, truly believe that with all my being. And I don't necessarily buy into The Secret at all. But I think it goes a bit farther than that.
Well, why'd you have to go and bring up The Secret?
Shit. But I do mean it in a very practical, knowing yourself, making the best decision for yourself sense, not, writing things on a piece of paper and hiding them under a tree.
For many, many years, I would, every time I had a birthday and there was a birthday cake and there was a candle on it, the thing that I would wish for was to lose weight.
Yeah.
That did not make me lose weight.
No.
And that to me is what manifesting is. And it's in isolation.
Yeah.
It's wanting something.
Yeah.
But not doing the work to find out what the work is that you need to do to achieve that goal.
Absolutely. It applies in everything, including relationships. I talk about, things I want from, what am I doing to try and get that to happen? Same with your health and, body image, what are you really doing? And it's so true. I'm not a religious person, although absolutely no shade to anyone that is. I think it's a wonderful thing to be able to have and believe in. And I'm quite jealous and envious, I should say, of people that are, people of faith. Not the extremists, everyone else. That looks quite hard. But it's true that they all say God will do 50% of the work and you have to do the other 50%. So you have faith that he's going to manifest this path for you and you're laying the bricks on the other side of it, manifesting it as well. And I just love that. And I think that really encompasses, is that the wrong word? I'm like, is that the wrong word? What am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say. What is the word I'm looking for?
I don't know.
Anyway, it really sums up what I'm trying to say. But obviously I don't mean it in the context of religion.
I think what it does to me, what I hear manifesting is like looking for the magic outside of you.
Yeah.
And not to sound like a trap, but you bring the magic.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're the magic.
Yeah. Follow guys, follow your dreams.
Oh my God. We've like totally,
I should write my own Disney film.
This has been so much fun.
Yeah, I've loved it.
I wish you'd open up a bit more.
I know. I'm sorry. I don't stop talking. I get it from my dad and I don't have a filter. Again, I get it from my dad. I'm very sorry.
Which makes you a dream guest.
Oh, thank you.
I've enjoyed my time with you hugely. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emma. Thanks, guys.